record. We are recording. Hello everyone. This is our little support group, really, online, virtually, to help all of you who are suffering from an eating disorder, both carers and sufferers alike, dealing with self-isolation and lockdown. This is our first attempt. Please forgive us if we go wrong. Please forgive me if my dog barks. But yeah, I'm Gemma Urton. I'm not Marge Urton as it says on the screen. I'm using Mum's account. And this is Mum, Marge.
Hi.
And we're from the charity Seed, which is supporting empathy for eating disorders. And this is the wonderful Deborah Watson from Wednesday's Child.
Hello there. Hi.
Hello, Debs. Debs has got a brilliant support group for eating disorders in, do we say Ipswich?
In Suffolk. So we're in East Anglia.
Brilliant. So let's see what you've written in with questions and see if we can help and support you through it. So Debs, what's the first question?
So the first one we had via Twitter was from Naomi, who said she's struggling with justifying eating in recovery from anorexia while at the same time doing less exercise and no longer having support available. So I guess quite typical of what we've kind of heard from the eating disorders community, people dealing with lockdown, suddenly finding they're not getting the therapy appointments, maybe exercise is being somewhat restricted, and they're kind of trying to keep themselves motivated to push on through.
So I guess this is, do you think she's sort of coming from a place of saying that she wants to exercise more but can't? Is that the struggle?
Yeah, I imagine so. And I think, you know, justifying eating is a big thing, isn't it? Is that kind of sense of, well, if nobody's watching me, particularly if I'm in isolation, if I've not got anybody watching over me, if I haven't got a parent there, if I haven't got a partner there, potentially I could get away with this. No one's going to see me. I'm not sitting down having meals with friends. I think that plays out in a lot of people's minds when they're on their own with an eating disorder. And then, so the idea of like being able to get away with a little bit more exercise, those would be kind of other triggers, you know, things that people might want to get away with doing in that sort of private world. I think this whole thing about deceit is a big thing in eating disorders. And I think any of us that have been through it know that often we try and hide our behaviours.
Yeah. I think one of the things I was thinking the other day, actually, just put my phone on silent. One of the things I was thinking the other day, because I was thinking about Ruby, my dog, and how often I'm taking her out for exercise and a walk. It does link in, it's a bit random, it's how my brain works. And I was suddenly thinking about, you know, how much exercise I'm getting. And it did strike me that actually I'm not getting any less than what I would normally do. And although I'm well and recovered and I don't have that mindset, I was thinking ahead of today how that must feel to somebody with the word lockdown already sounds like we're doing nothing. Does that make sense? But actually, we're all doing as much as we ever really did. It's just a term. So in my head, one of the things I was thinking was that, you know, to maybe try and get people to remember that it's just a word and a term. It doesn't, it sounds scary and it sounds like we're being more dormant and restricted. But actually we are in a very lucky and fortunate position in that the government are saying we're allowed to sort of have an hour outside a day, which I think is quite a nice chunk of time. You know, if you've got a dog and you're lucky enough to sort of be able to take dogs for walks like I am, you know, I'm getting my daily exercise, but I'm not coming home and just, yes, I'm doing work and sitting down in front of a laptop, but I'm still doing my daily chores. You know, I'm still doing my cleaning, the washing, I'm still engaging with people. I think it's very easy, isn't it, to think that lockdown is like, I'm not doing anything, I'm just at home all day. That doesn't warrant me being able to have my normal food routine. Or actually, you know, it's still a normal environment, and it's just trying to remember that it's just a word. That's what I say. Don't know if you've got anything, Mum.
No, I haven't. I think you've really covered everything, Gemma, from that point of view. But I think you've got to, you know, look at it from inside a person with an anorexic mind and thought and processes. And I think that's totally different from where I come from the caring and the advice and the information. So I think, yeah, for me, you've covered everything really, really well, Jem.
Abba, next one, Debs.
So Glenn from London says, we're expecting our daughter to be discharged from a residential unit rather earlier than we were expecting because the hospital are now operating on limited resources and want as many people as possible discharged. Do you have any tips for how we deal with potentially challenging behaviours in the family dynamic when our daughter comes home? Oh, that's, yeah, that's so hard.
Mum, do you want to go?
I will certainly go on this one, yeah. Basically, I think you've got to look at, I think communication is the biggest key for when a person is discharged and they come back into the home environment. It can be a war zone and it can be a horrendous situation, because you've got to understand an eating disorder has a psychological impact on anybody who's part of the sufferer's family, friends, whatever. It has an impact on us all. And there is an excellent book, and it's called Skills-Based Learning for Caring for Loved Ones with an Eating Disorder. And that's been pioneered by the wonderful Professor Janet Treasure, who belongs to the Maudsley Clinic. And this is termed as the Maudsley Method. Now, if I can give any advice, try and get this book, and it gives metaphors and ideas of how our behaviour impacts on the person with the eating disorder. And it's it will be very difficult, but I think from the point of view of the challenging behaviours, I think you have to sit down and talk. Communication is a massive thing. I think in terms of food situations, meal times have got to be as relaxed as possible. Don't be watching what they're eating, don't be questioning everything. You know, make time for each other, and you get back to being the parent and not the carer. And it's very difficult to reconnect with your daughter or your son when they have an eating disorder, because very often we connect with the eating disorder, and you've got to think it's not them who are challenging you. It's the eating disorder and the voice of the anorexic voice, the subconscious voice, that is what's the word I'm looking for?
Overriding the...
Yeah, dominating and overriding them as an individual, because it's such a powerful force that nobody can ever understand, and I can't understand it because I've not ever had an eating disorder. But when you research and when you look at things that are available out there, you get to understand how you then start to connect with the eating disorder and not with your son and daughter, and that's a massive issue. So one is communication around food and food issues, away from actually eating. You know, pre-plan what is their meal plan, how has that been in the unit, what would be safe for them, how do they feel they could cope with that, and then you sit down and you plan that. And I think if communication and planning is the key, it will actually alleviate a lot of the stress for the whole family. And there are going to be times when it all kicks off, and it'll come from nowhere, believe me, and you've got to have a plan in place to deal with that. And our sign was that, right? Nobody can get anywhere arguing. And as soon as that happened, and it won't speak to the hand, it won't
it wasn't dismissive.
No, it wasn't dismissive, but it was, whoa, let's just let's just all go into our own areas, calm down and come back. And when the situation is defused, then you talk, and then you get back on a level footing. But there is no way that you can deal with anything while somebody is screaming and shouting, and maybe you're screaming and shouting back. It may be that you're crying, it may be that, you know, it's a whole complex situation, and it's not the norm. It is not the norm. So this book will help you to develop the skills to cope with a situation at home with somebody who has an eating disorder.
I think one of our turning points, wasn't it, Mum, when you started to remember to see me as me and not just an eating disorder. I don't know what your experiences were, Debs, but that helped our relationship a lot.
I think that any parent, the important thing is to remember the identity of the child you love, and to differentiate the eating disorder from that daughter or that son, or even a part. This is same applies to a partner or a spouse. You know, you have to stop seeing that person as the eating disorder. You have to isolate the two, and I know that's really difficult, but you have to look at them as, you know, if you want to kind of look at them as Jekyll and Hyde, fine, but they are two different identities entirely. And perhaps the other thing I'd just add to what you said, Marge, is that right now, family conflict, regardless of whether there's not an eating disorder in the household, it's going to be awful for so many families. We're spending more time together. Nobody's getting a few hours to go to work. Nobody's getting out to go to school. Nobody's going and diffusing things or going and seeing friends. It will be an absolute pressure cooker for so many people. So give yourself a bit of slack. Slack is what I would say, and know that family conflict is going to happen anyway. And also, even though your child has been discharged from the hospital, don't forget that there are resources out there for you to turn to for help. Whether you turn to SEED or Wednesday's Child, or you go back to the unit and you say, I, as the parent, am really struggling with my mental health dealing with this. I need bloody help. And I think sometimes we're too afraid to say that actually we as the carers are finding it difficult. It's okay to need help. So whoever you turn to, don't try and deal with it alone, because it's no good if you implode as well.
And can I just add to that, please, Debbie, because the skills that and the tools that you learn within the skills-based learning book that Janet's written are transferable. We use them in all sorts of different situations, like you say, whether that person's got an eating disorder or not. And it is about respect, communication, and, you know, reconnection. And what we used to do when Gemma used to come out of a unit, or she was home for a weekend, we used to have time when we'd go out and have a coffee. And the rule was we didn't speak about the eating disorder, and we reconnected as a unit, and we reconnected as a family. And those times were so precious because we all had, you know, the understanding that we went out to have 2 hours. If we wanted a bit of cake, that was fine. If Gemma just wanted a coffee, that's fine as well. Nobody made an issue out of anything, but that reconnection was so special.
Yeah, I agree.
Brill.
Wow, what a question, but really important one. So Kate from Nottingham asks, I'm finding it really difficult to deal with life constantly around my family, and I'm feeling my old eating disorder issues wanting to surface because I can't get any escape from my parents or my siblings. How do I explain this to everyone without causing constant arguments? Actually, in fact, I think that picks up on some of the themes we were just talking about there, doesn't it? Everybody's chucked together in that environment, and it's hell. So even if you're doing quite well with your eating disorder recovery, the potential to get drawn back into those behaviours is quite prevalent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, make use of your own space. You know, if you do have your own bedroom, you know, if you do like I have a sewing room and a craft room, I'm very, very lucky. And, you know, not that there's a problem in our household, but if I wanted to escape and go and engross myself in something away from the norm, that's brilliant. Then could go down to the gym and, you know, engross yourself in a little bit of exercise. And it's about respecting each other's space as well. And, you know, for people who have an eating disorder, to be thrown together with family constantly can be such pressure that, you know, you are allowed to, you know, to go off into your own area. You know, you are allowed to go and have a nice bath and a long soak and a glass of wine if that's what you want to do. And we all have that. And, you know, why not make that bit of time for you? You know, you don't have to be lumped together just because you're in one house.
Yeah, I think one of the things she was sort of asked, what was her name, sorry?
Kate.
One of the things Kate was asking was, how do I articulate that? And one of the things that I've learned, and it took me a long time, is how to communicate in a kind and compassionate way. When you want something, it's to involve the other person in the question, into the equation. So if you said mum or dad or whoever your partner is, whoever it is, I'm just going to go off and have some me time, but it's because I love you and I can just feel myself getting a little bit het up and I don't want to take it out on you. So you know, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a little bit of space, but why don't you have some space too? Why don't you go and have a nice bath? Or so it's about delivering the question, but including the participant, if that makes sense. That's one of the things that and that applies with anything. Like Debs, you'll know as a businesswoman and mum, you'll know with the charity and working in schools and everything, it's how to pose a question, but to make sure that it's for the bigger gain of everyone involved in it. So that would be maybe a way to handle that, Kate, if it helps.
Yeah. So Sam from York asks, how do I help my girlfriend through this lockdown period without turning into a constant nag? I can see she's struggling with not having work to go to and no longer seeing her friends, but I'm really paranoid that she's going to take backward steps in her recovery.
Ooh. Well, I mean, I guess, I don't know the situation, but I guess don't try not to show your, it sounds like he's possibly preempting, which of course is natural, but you know, one thing I remember is when you've got eagle eyes on you, and I don't know if you remember this, Tebs, but that even when you were having a period where you felt like you were starting to make a breakthrough, as soon as anybody started on at me, that would make me go like that. And I think it goes back to the question we answered a bit earlier in terms of remember the person, remember your girlfriend, like, do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
I don't know about you.
I also think it's such a different dynamic, isn't it, when you're a partner, or you know, a husband or a spouse, because it's not the same as being a parent. You can't be blackmailing or, you know, all that stuff. I can remember kind of, you know, with my parents, they could get away with saying, well, if you don't do that, you can't have the car keys, or you can't have, well, you can't do that when you're going to crawl into bed at the end of the night with someone. It's a completely different relationship dynamic. And, you know, actually all credit to this guy for saying, I'm worrying about her. But I think sometimes a paranoia of a loved one, and you know, it's natural. You've seen that person go to hell and back with an eating disorder. You don't want them to slip, but you can allow that paranoia to almost force it into reality, rather than actually just kind of taking a step back and saying, okay, she's an adult too. I'm going to look at where she might be struggling. I'm going to look at what other things that we could bring in. Have we got our date night? You know, like even that kind of just saying, you know, once a week, it doesn't matter if we're on lockdown, we're going to light some candles, watch a decent movie and have a nice meal together, or just put the real stuff back in. And I think maybe it's just the small stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely right. Definitely. Yeah, and I think going back to what Gemma often says, you know, if someone's having a bad day, it's okay not to be okay, you know, and allow that person that time, and don't think, oh my God, you know, they're having a meltdown, it's going to go backwards, everything, what am I doing wrong? You don't have to feel like that. Allow that person to feel those emotions, because without those emotions, the pressure cooker is going to build up, and you know, the will then start to control other elements of the eating disorder. That is the underlying issue in the first place. So just allow that person, like you said, Debbie, a bit of slack. You know, it's going to be different for everybody, and it's going to be difficult for everybody too.
Yeah. So Julie's got a question that I think we can all relate to. So she says, I can't bear going food shopping right now, as it just makes me so anxious. Have you got any tips? And I think, like, even if you haven't got an eating disorder, anybody that's gone through a supermarket in the last few weeks would just go, oh my God, it's hell. Gosh, this is awful. I mean, Marge, I bet you're having people contact you guys at Seed about it, because I know we are as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's some really, really good advice in the coronavirus lockdown eating disorder document that we've put together as partnership. And there's some really good tips in there about shopping, Debbie, which you highlighted, about having a backup plan if it all got too much, having a friend that you can ring, having a shopping list, having an alternative, all those type of things, which sound very simple, but are effective. And it gives you that mental stability and reassurance that we don't have to walk into a supermarket and everything be anxious. We can walk into a supermarket in control, and you don't have to let things upset you if the person in front isn't moving on fast enough, just have the courtesy just to, look at what's near you and, just wait that chance for them to move on before you move in. But we went shopping yesterday and it was a little bit more relaxed, actually. There wasn't all this following each other around. And I think that I found that very difficult. You had to follow, and if you missed something, you had to go all the way around again.
Yeah, you got to follow the arrows.
Yeah, and it was a little bit stressful. But having said that, like, you can elaborate on the shopping question, Debbie, because of what you actually included in that coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, one of the services that we did right before, we were doing it right up until we went into lockdowns, we do an assisted shopping. So if somebody says, I struggle with an eating disorder, I find it really challenging because of my restrictive eating or my binge eating, and I get freaked out by a supermarket, we do go and do a buddy thing, and we'll go round a supermarket with somebody. So that was the service we were providing right up until lockdown. And then, of course, they said you couldn't go around a supermarket with someone. So what we've now done is said, if anybody wants us on a WhatsApp, or, we'll do that, just as some kind of guidance and support. Something that's been occurring to me, and it's perhaps something I can pick up with and report back and see if there's any effectiveness with this, is if this continues, I wonder whether there's an argument for being able to say to people that are in this sort of situation where they do find it a challenge, going to their healthcare professional, their GP or the eating disorder treatment team and saying, can you just write me a letter, a few lines, so I can walk into the supermarket and say, the reason I need to walk around with my mum, my friend, whatever, is because I suffer from an eating disorder. I think if anybody was to walk into a supermarket now who'd got dementia or one of those kind of conditions, we'd all be really understanding, and any security guard or manager of the supermarket would be really understanding. I think the difficulty with an eating disorder is people don't understand how challenging that would be. So I would, it may be difficult to get an appointment with a GP right now just to say, can you write me a letter? But if this is going to go on for the longer term, I think the next time you go into the treatment team or you go to your GP, just say, please, will you just write me a letter? Because I don't want to, allow my eating disorder to win and no longer go to a supermarket because I need to eat. But I'm finding this really hard, and to be able to go around with somebody would really help. I don't know what you guys think, but it just sort of feels like
a brilliant idea. I mean, just from another, sort of general public day-to-day life perspective, one of the ways that I'm sort of dealing with, not just even like, I'm in London at the moment, and I don't know about where you are, but a lot of the queues are going right down the street. And you can only walk on the street because I'm not going to walk on the road because there's cars. And even just that walking with Ruby, if I get any closer than 2 meters to their queuing system down the public street, oh my God, I've had people scream at me, absolutely scream at me. And do you know what? It's really difficult. But the one thing that I'm doing to just sort of deal with it and keep calm is to just remember that everybody reacts in different ways to a situation. And this is a situation that none of us has ever been in. So let's say Sue from Fulham Palace Road screamed at me yesterday. I took a deep breath and thought, do you know what? That is Sue's way of dealing with it. She might be, living on her own and she's feeling lonely, she's feeling down. She might be living with 6 kids under one roof all of a sudden and she's tearing her hair out. She might have just had a full-blown argument with, her husband back at home. She might be dealing with, anxiety and stress. So one of the things is to just try and take a beat and not take it personally. And I know that's really difficult, but that's the way that I've been dealing with the challenges around me at the moment, and in the supermarket, to just sort of go, let her go and get a cauliflower before I do, or let her go and get her biscuits, before I do. I had that the other day. I literally she was like, I went to get some bread and I wasn't 2 meters apart, and I just thought, you know what, love, you have that, because I haven't got a rush, and we can wait. And I know it's hard, but it's just sometimes just going, that's you, that's not me.
And that's, it's so true what they say, you know, you've got to walk a mile in everybody else's shoes until you know what they're living and what they're dealing with. And you know, so
and I think sometimes with an eating disorder, and I know what I used to be like, you don't mean this in a nasty way, but you become very involved, like everything is heightened about you become quite selfish.
Completely.
And you know, I don't hold my hands up, and I hope that don't come across in the wrong way, but you do, because everything is so about what your needs are right now, whether you can get that certain brand, or whether you can get that certain, and it's sometimes you've just got to go, like, there are other people. I don't know if that helps.
Absolutely. I think black and white thinking is something that people with eating disorders do a lot, and you know, there are all sorts of shades of grey right now, so we just need to kind of tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I hope that helps that one.
So just moving on to the next question then, Mike from London, he says, my wife and I are constantly disagreeing about how to manage my teenage daughter's anorexia. She came home from boarding school a few weeks ago, and since then it's been hell trying to cope with the issues in the family. My daughter wants to take over the kitchen and cook for herself every night, but I'm not sure that's the right thing.
Ooh, right.
This brings memories back, Mum.
Just a bit. I think what we've learned over the years, it would be so easy to step back and let your son or daughter take over the kitchen, because that is, you're not going to have conflict if you're going to let them do it, but it's not right.
Path of least resistance.
It's not right, because if they allow that to happen, then they will bit by bit start to control everything else that is going on in the environment to suit them. And it's about, again, communication, telling them it's not acceptable to do that, and from now on this will be what is happening. And for example, many years ago, we had a carer who used to go upstairs and watch the portable television upstairs while the daughter binged in front of the television, and it's so wrong. It is so wrong. There's consequences on everybody when this happens, and there are more people in the household, and if that affects everybody, then there's got to be a consequence to that, and there's got to be boundaries in place. It's okay, you know, pandering, if you like, to every whim, but it can't happen when you've got other people in the household. Another lady I know for a fact used to, you know, want to use the bathroom when the children were being bathed in order to purge, and you know, the children had to get out of the bath, and it was just unacceptable. It is unacceptable that this is allowed to happen, but once it does happen, it will extend to all different areas. And one of the things I would say is that when Dennis and I were going through all this as a family, we never ever argued about the eating disorder, ever, because it will destroy a relationship. It destroys everything in its path. You have to work together, you have to compromise, and you have to be solid together, because if not, the eating disorder of the mentality of your son and daughter will take over everything.
I can echo that more strongly. I'm always so, you know, just so proud of my parents for how they managed to stick together when this enemy was within the mix. I mean, it's so hard on families, and you know, not everybody is a married couple, but you know, it might just be that there are one adult and some children in the home, but whatever happens, that home life cannot be ruined by the bomb of the eating disorder. And although it's, you know, initially it's the pain for the gain, isn't it, of saying there has to be some rules, there has to be a standard that cannot be shaken or broken, because ultimately we need the family to stay together, and the family unit will be compromised if we give in every time.
Yeah. Absolutely, Debbie, absolutely. Can you remember back, Gemma, how, you know, with your elements of control, how that was negotiated? I mean, you maybe do, but I just wondered if you
I mean, it took us, you know, we went through, oh God, the screaming matches, World War III. I remember when I think I threw a plate at you. I'm not making fun of it, but what I'm trying to say is, like, God, we went through it, but it was when we started, we started to communicate and find a middle ground, that I started to view things differently. Rather than seeing mum and dad as being the bad guys, just let me do this, just let me do that, and taking everything out on them, God love them. When we started to talk, and mum and dad would actually say, okay, if we allow this, but with this connected, how does that sit with you? And all of a sudden talking to me as an adult, as somebody who was normal, whatever normal is. But it took us a lot of trial and error, didn't it, Mum? There was no this. We're going back, like, I'm nearly 36, so we're going back over 20 years. When I was at home, not at school, not in a hospital, those were the times where everything was exposed, and it took tough love. But the end gain of that, I mean, I'll never forget. Just quickly, I'll never forget when you went in the bedroom, because I used to hoard newspapers. I don't know what it was, but I couldn't throw away newspapers, magazines. I would spend all of my day in bed, and then I would go out for a few hours and come back, and it would just be reading, sitting there on my own, taking sleeping tablets. Do you remember that, Mum? And I'd just sleep. And I went out, and Mum and Dad had gone in and gutted the room, right? And it was World War III, but it was the turning point. And I'm not suggesting that this all happened right now, but what I mean is there's no rule book, and there's no right or wrong in all this. But what there is sometimes finding the middle ground, but also being challenged is sometimes the only way that somebody with an eating disorder is going to see the bigger picture. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And maybe some people watching this are not going to like me saying that, but it needs to be said.
I think it's true. And I was speaking to a father the other day, and we were talking about what an eating disorder gives somebody. And I know that's it can sound a bit harsh, but I think when we all look at it, what is that eating disorder giving you? And if it is a form of attention, I always kind of say, okay, how can you flip that and think, I could be gaining more love, more positive attention, not by being screamed and shouted at by my parents and being the centre of their earth because they're worried about me dying from my eating disorder and this is causing the family hell. I could turn my life around, and I could gain all that love and compassion and empathy by having an adult relationship with my parents as an individual, not as the identity of my eating disorder. And that's a really difficult shift. But I think sometimes if we start to look at what am I trying to gain from my eating disorder, then you can start to flip that switch.
Yeah, definitely.
So last question is from Lucy Joe, and she says, I can feel myself struggling. I'm living on my own and not coping at all. I no longer have my therapy appointments because everything was cancelled when lockdown set in, but I'm already resorting to some really bad binging behaviours, and I just don't know who to reach out to. Oh, I really feel for her. Really
no,
bless
her.
I don't know if I'm being sorry if I'm being a bit ill-informed, but people can still see their therapist in theory online, can they? Is that something that she can look at?
And I think it's really important. I think also, I mean, we saw Prince William, didn't we, yesterday, talk about mental health, and there's been a lot of medical professionals saying over the last few days on television that don't forget, you still can reach out to the healthcare services even though all this is going on. I think the danger right now is people that are imploding with mental health issues think, oh, I mustn't go near the doctors and I mustn't speak to my treatment team because of COVID. Actually, you still can reach out. But I suppose at the same time, there will be some services that will be more stretched because perhaps staff are sick, or services have been diverted elsewhere. But I can see why some people would feel that there's less availability of services.
But then again, here we are, Wednesday's Child and Seed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where if people are being able to connect with their therapist, we're here, and as we know, like there's Mind, there's Samaritans for all ranges of mental health issues. But yeah, I think you're right, Debs. It's very important that people realise that there is support still out there, but also they don't feel was speaking to a few people recently, and they feel like because of the severity of COVID-19, and because of what they watch on the news as well, it's about people losing lives, and this figure goes up every day, and then they're sort of sat there thinking, well, there's somebody who's dying, and there's somebody who's losing their parent or friend, and I don't matter in all of this. And it's making sure that they know that they do matter, because yes, it's awful and it's heartbreaking, and coronavirus is putting pressure on the system, and it's taking lives, and it's awful. But if we don't look after each other, there's going to be more lives taken in the long run. And I don't just mean at the extremity of taking one's own life, but I mean their life diminishing, because it's up here, it stops, and they're in this prison. And that's one thing, that every life matters, every mind, every life, every voice is important. I mean, I still see my therapist. I had a session with her yesterday, and we do WhatsApp video calls just to help with my anxiety, and we do that, and that's quite readily available. And there'll be so many therapists out there, and systems out there where it's still really easy, even if you don't have a laptop, to be able to do it on your phone. I always say, I mean, you can't beat, I'm dying to see my mum in the same room, and I'm sure you're dying to see your friends, and you can't beat that. But at the moment, we just have to adapt and accept. But yeah, please, I think it was Joe, was it? Please don't think that you're on your own, because there is support out there, and this is why we're doing this little bit in the hope that it will help others too.
Yeah.
Can I just add on to that, please, Jen? Because when people say can't see the therapist and such like, and as you've just said, there's so many self-help organisations out there who are delivering sometimes far more than they've ever done in a different way of communicating with people, through social media and such, and through getting groups together. And I think the message for me is, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't just rely on that one person. Look outside the box. Think outside the box. Think about what support and self-help there is out there, and make that part of your network of support. And if one isn't available, then the other one is. So it's about thinking outside of the box and being more proactive in what you are able to link in with.
And also almost like not allowing it to be an excuse not to go get help, not to find support, because it's really easy with an eating disorder. You can start to navel gaze and procrastinate and say, oh yes, but it's not my fault, and there was no one out there to help me, and oh, but we were in lockdown, so I had to behave like this. Well, actually, there are lots of people out there that if you even if it's not a medical professional, if it's just your buddy who's on, like you say, on the end of a WhatsApp message, or is going to jump on a Zoom call or a Skype with you, so many friends and family would rather give you 10 minutes than feel that you were imploding in your own room. So,
and that's interesting, Debs, you just said that, because like you quite rightly say, it's very easy to, you could, on the flip side, and I imagine a few people out there are, I don't know if they want to admit it, but it's something to think about, that they're using this as an excuse to feed their habits and their eating disorder or their mental health issues. It's very easy to look for excuses, isn't it? And I think being brave means going, whoa, no.
yeah, and sort of saying to yourself, I am the author of my life. I'm driving this car. I'm navigating here. I can't wait for somebody else to get in the car alongside me. I've got to do this every single day. Every minute of the day, I have to make the positive choices to improve my life.
And that in turn brings back their control, doesn't it, Debs? Like everyone's saying, I've lost control and I can't control the situation. Well, actually, you can. Exactly what you're saying.
Wow, what a session, ladies.
Yeah, well done.
What a positive ending as well.
Yeah, well, look, I think what the three of us have agreed that we were just going to do this as a one-off, weren't we? So what I think we'd really like is, whoever sees this, if you could just give us a little bit of feedback. Either we'll put the email addresses in the links, but it's hello@wednesdayschild.co.uk, or hello@seedeatingdisorders.org.uk, because it'd be really nice to get feedback and to see if this is something that people would want a little bit more regularly.
Yeah, and if they want it again, we'll come back and we'll answer some more questions.
So
just on cue, Ruby's gone.
So the link will be available. It will be distributed. It will be made available. So there's no reason for anybody to miss out. But love to everybody. Keep safe. Stay strong.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.